Alrighty, before I get started with this video, I just want to quickly mention that I am dealing with a crazy post-Cedar Point headache right now. Not sure why, but if I sound a little bit off in this video and I just don't have the normal energy I do, that is why. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before we get into the main video. What is going on, guys? Today I wanted to make a little video about Cedar Point since I was just there yesterday and it's currently fresh in my mind. This isn't going to be your typical review or a guide on the park, but rather a guide on how to tackle this huge park if you don't want to spend the money on a fast lane or a fast lane plus. While growing up and during my teenage years, I used to go to this park with very little cash on me, which wasn't always the best idea, but you know how it is when you're young and stupid. But either way, Fastlane Plus is not always a very cost-efficient thing to buy if you're going to Cedar Point on a budget, which I know some of you viewers might be doing that. You know, you might not want to drop $150 or whatever it is on the Fastlane Plus. So I went to Cedar Point last Monday and I managed to get every credit or most of the credits with re-rides without buying a fast lane on a day that they were only open until 8. Minus the kiddie coasters, because I can't get on one of those without an adult, and Woodstock Express is just, I've been on it before and I'm not going to ride that unless I'm getting the credit. But for everyone watching this video, please make sure to check out my other content and the other content creators who inspired me to make this video, such as Airtime, Thrills, and Coastoons. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so there's a couple disclaimers I want to mention before I fully get into the guide on how to get all your credits in one day and the strategy on how to do that. The main one is the day and the time of season that you go. So honestly, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, this method is only guaranteed to work on weekdays, since obviously I said we did this on a Monday. So if you plan on visiting on any other day that isn't Monday or Tuesday, this is not the best guide that you want to watch. I would recommend watching a guide on how many days you stay at the park and how many fast lanes you're going to buy. But if you go on a Wednesday or Thursday, you might get away with it, but weekends are just going to be impossible with the traffic at this park, or with the traffic that this park gets on those days. It's also worth mentioning that I did this in the month of May, which is the most dead month of the year for Cedar Point. The other summer months are fine, like they're not terrible, but September and October are the most notoriously busy months. It can run up wait times to some of the rides that are walk-ons when we went end up getting up to somewhere near an hour wait. So I would just consider making your trip during the months of May or June if it is all possible. My other disclaimer is that Top Thrill 2 is currently not open, as many of you guys might know. It closed the day before we went. So obviously, while there's one less ride to fit into this day, there was also larger lines at other rides, because there's not like a big new ride that everyone's going to and spreading the lines evenly. So that's just something I wanted to clear up and have you guys keep in mind before the trip. I'm gonna go ahead and split this guide up into 3 sections of the day: morning, afternoon, and evening. Mostly because that gives you a nice baseline of where you should be at the end of each of these sections of the day, just so that you're on board to get all your coasters in. So for the morning, you want to get to the park as soon as possible. I am a season pass holder. I actually have the Cedar Fair All Park Pass that just came out this year. But I did not utilize the Magnum entrance or early entry, just so I could get a good first timer experience to give you guys a good idea of how it will go for you. I also got to the park about 15 minutes after opening, so I was a bit late in that regard. We ran into some problems on the drive up there, but I don't think it did too much harm. You maybe miss out on one re-ride at that point. Just make sure you get here before 10:30, between 10 and 10:30, if you want to get many of the rides in. For what you should do when you get inside the park, typically I would have suggested that you go to the back first, like a lot of other guides will tell you. But ever since the COVID season back in 2020, I noticed that many crowds will actually start over at Raptor and then head to the back. So we actually went to Wild Mouse first, which was the only credit I didn't have at Cedar Point, obviously besides Top Thrill. Um, this ride only had about a 10-minute wait max, 10 to 15, and then 15 minutes for gatekeeper after that. So we got those 2 credits by the beach right out of the way. They were right next to each other. It's like a 2-minute walk, if that. So after that, we went over to Raptor, which was about the biggest and only mistake we made all day. Raptor's operations were really bad this time we came, and we ended up waiting about 35 to 40 minutes, when realistically, with the amount of people moving through the line, it should have only been like 20. They were stacking trains really badly today. I do think they were training a few new operators, so that's fine, but just keep that in mind for when you guys go. The big idea here is that you want to clear all the front of the park coasters as soon as possible, because recently these coasters get longer wait times as the day goes on, rather than what it used to be where these rides would get the longest wait times in the morning. So it's a good idea to get these done before anything else. It's also a good goal to be done with Raptor, Valraven, Gatekeeper, and Wild Mouse if possible before noon, meaning that we are on to the next part of the day. Alright, so after getting off Valraven at about 12:15, we went over to Blue Streak since it's literally right next to the exit of Valraven, and we actually managed to get 2 rides on this without getting off due to how dead the ride was. Normally, I would not recommend you get 2 rides on Blue Streak just because if it has any weight, you just want to make this a one and done. It's just a wooden coaster, in my opinion. It's not that good, but it is a decent ride, so I would recommend getting on it once, but only at this time if it has a shorter line than 10 minutes. And you can tell if it's going to be shorter or longer than that by looking at the queue. If that first switchback is filled with people, it's definitely longer than 10 minutes, and I would not recommend waiting for this. I've only seen it get that long about once when other rides were closed, but yeah, just stay away from this ride if it's longer than a 10-minute wait. From there, I actually walked over to Corkscrew since we knew it would be a walk-on, since literally no one rides Corkscrew, and I've never seen it not be a walk-on. And also because the next part of the strategy is to go from Corkscrew over to the right side of the peninsula. So Corkscrew is right in the middle of the main Midway, like a bit down from where the main gates are by Gatekeeper's Keyholes, meaning that you can go from Corkscrew to the right side of the park in Magnum really quickly. It's the best way to get from the front of the park towards the middle and the back. And this is where things can get a little bit tricky. I've seen Magnum hit a 30-minute wait before, but that was on a weekend day. This day it was a walk-on all day. So if it's a walk-on, I think it's a good idea to get multiple rides on it, since it's honestly one of the best rides in the park, at least in my opinion. We managed to get 2 in a row right there, as well as a front row ride at that time. So I would recommend, if it's more than a 5-minute wait, which is pretty much a station wait, then only ride it once, because the thing to remember is we're going for 1 ride on everything right now. And if you're re-riding a ride with a wait, you're running a risk of not getting other rides in later at all. So from Magnum, you want to head down the Gemini Midway, which is, you empty out into the Midway from Magnum's exit, so you're really not going anywhere. Gemini's right there. You want to get a ride on Gemini at this time as long as the wait is shorter than 20 minutes, which is the absolute longest I've ever seen Gemini's wait hit on a weekday. So you should be able to get this one in I'm pretty sure you guys can get this one in. From there, you want to factor in some kind of break. There is a bathroom on the way from Gemini to the next ride that we went on, which is Seal of Vengeance, and you want to keep yourself in good health. You don't want to risk dehydration, just not going to the bathroom just to get rides in, and there's definitely more time than you think, trust me. So obviously I just said we went to Steel of Vengeance from Gemini. Steel of Vengeance is somewhat of a puzzle of a ride to factor in when talking about a non-fast lane day, because the line for this ride never goes below an hour. Shortest I've waited was about 30 minutes, and that's because I went right after it broke down on a day that they were already dead. But either way, it's a good idea to get this one at least once, because it's pretty much unanimously the best coaster in the park and almost unanimously the best coaster in the world. So get in line for this one if it has a time of 90-minute wait or shorter, because the sign outside of the entrances of all these rides are always going to exaggerate the wait a little bit. The line for Steel of Vengeance listed an hour wait, but we only waited about 40-45 minutes. After Steel Vengeance and its advertised hour wait, which only, like I said, became about 30 minutes, we decided to take about a 30-minute break and eat some snacks and hydrate over at the Saloon Diner or whatever it's called. You'll know what I'm talking about if you're in the park. It's right next to the exit of Steel Vengeance. After we took our break, the shortest line in any kind of vicinity was Millennium Force, which was listed at about 45 minutes, but it only ended up being about 30. Millennium Force has great operations, which I'll get into later, but this is about where you want to be around 4:30 to 5 p.m., which brings us to the evening. So as I said, you want to be in Millennium's line around 4:30 or 5 at the latest. This ride almost always has like good operations when I'm at the park, so if the line is advertised at 45 minutes or even an hour, you should be absolutely fine. It's gonna move faster than that, and it's mostly shaded, so you'll be fine. From there, it's a good idea to head back into Frontier Town through the Frontier Trail to hit up Maverick. Maverick is another one of those world-class coasters that Cedar Point has that gets a ridiculous wait every day, no matter how dead the park seems. So it's a good idea to get this one in for sure before you run into any problems. Maverick's never really had as short of a wait as it did when I was there last Monday, but even if it ends up being almost an hour, that puts you leaving the ride at about 6:15. So you'll have plenty of time to get more rides in after this one. And I think it's a good time to mention that we did go on a Monday in May, so the park was only open till 8 p.m. So if you end up coming on a day where they're open until 10, then you are in for a great time. You're going to be less stressed out than we were, and you're going to get multiple re-rides in on the rides that you want. So after Maverick, we kind of just took a break because we knew we had more than enough time to get all the other credits in the park, like Iron Dragon, Cedar Creek Mine Ride, and Valraven, which were all walk-ons except for Valraven, which was about 20 minutes. We actually skipped all 3 of those rides I mentioned because we wanted to get re-rides on Magnum, Steel Vengeance, Skyhawk, and Millennium. But in the case of you guys wanting all the credits, since some people will never get back to this park in their life due to the distance, you'll probably want to get everything else in that time frame, and you will have plenty of time to get it, and even a few re-rides if you're lucky and can walk fast. And that's another thing I just wanted to mention real quick. If you're going to Cedar Point, you are going to walk. This park is more than a mile long, or it might actually just be like a mile long. Even still, the walk from Steel Vengeance to the exit is brutal at the end of the night because of how long you have to walk. So this park is massive. So that's just something you guys should keep in mind. So to end this one off, Cedar Point is honestly one of the best places in the world to go, even if you don't have the money to buy a fast lane. I see a ton of other enthusiasts on social media, especially Twitter, like swearing up and down that if you're going to this park for 1 or even 2 days, that you need a fast lane to get most of the coasters in. They don't even get to saying all the coasters. And I wanted to show everyone that this is only really partially true from a local that goes to this park many times a year. If you want a ton of re-rides and the chance to take longer breaks from riding, then I would highly recommend getting a fast lane, especially if you're only going for 1 day. But if you want to get all these credits in on a budget for 1 day, then this is the guide that I would follow pretty closely, since it's worked for me multiple times, and I know a couple of my friends have also, used my guide and gotten through the park just like I did. So with that being said, thank you guys, and thank you Cedar Point for giving me the vast majority of the background footage I'm using for this video. I would not be a Thuzy if it wasn't for this park back in the day, and I think that every wannabe coaster enthusiast has to make it to this park eventually. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.